What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Pit Limiter Podcast. It is episode number 6. I am Zach Buchanan, one of your hosts. Joining me, as always, my host, co-host, John Poole III. What's up, buddy?
Oh, not too much. I like showing up every other episode now, so nice to see you again, everybody.
He decided to take a little vacation last week, but you know. All right, let's jump right into it. There's a lot to talk about this week. It's Stop and Go, one of our favorite segments. John, what do you got for us?
We're going to start the podcast out on a somber note. Charlie Whiting has passed away from pulmonary embolism. He was F1's race director.
So Doug Coby won the modified season opener at Myrtle Beach, but it did not come without controversy. He actually won the pole position for the race, but as he was coming back into the pits, received a puncture on his left front tire. He thought he ran over a nail or something, and so he had a puncture, went to NASCAR, asked them if he could change the left front. They allowed him to change it, but since it was an unapproved adjustment, they dropped him to the back of the field, and he still came through the field and won the race.
So a brand new championship this year, an electric motorbike championship known as Moto E, has now been placed in doubt after a massive fire in their garages overnight at Circuit de Jerez.
So we had the Super Sebring weekend this past weekend. We had the main event, I want to call it, the 12 hours of Sebring, which was capped off by the number 31 Whelen Engineering Cadillac DPI of Felipe Nasser, Pippo Durrani, and Eric Curran, taking the overall victory for the Action Express team.
According to a Forbes article from a contributor that was at the Auto Club Cup race, he stated that attendance there was absolutely poor, even though it was a perfect day, 80-degree day. He said, according to his estimate, there was about 35,000 people in attendance for the Cup race, when there is 68,000 seats available for sale.
So y'all probably saw it in the headlines. Y'all probably know what's going on. Kyle Busch won his 200th NASCAR National Series victory on Sunday. He won the Monster Energy Cup race at the Auto Club Speedway. His first victory in the Cup Series came at the Auto Club Speedway in 2005.
The Australian Supercar Series is going to conduct a center of gravity test. Due to the dominance of the Mustang, there are questions that the Mustang does have an advantage through its center of gravity.
So a little bit of a head scratcher Friday afternoon in NASCAR's Monster Energy Cup Series qualifying from the Auto Club Speedway. In the final round, every single car failed to post a lap. As some of you know, the package is conducive to pack racing and qualifying, so everybody's trying to play the waiting game and go as late as they possibly can. And as we saw, everybody failed to get to the start-finish line to start their lap before time expired on the clock. Therefore, nobody set an official time in the final round. Austin Dillon was awarded the pole by virtue of his time the previous round.
So interesting developments. Marshall Pruitt from Racer.com reported on this, but the AOC and the World Endurance Championship are looking into allowing DPIs to race in WIC and the 24 Hours of Le Mans starting in 2022 with their second-gen cars, if their times are comparable to the new 2020 hypercar regulations.
So the first race of the Super Sebring weekend was the World Endurance Championship 1,000 miles of Sebring. And the overall victory went to Toyota. Fernando Alonso, Suzuki Nakajima, and Sebastian Buemi took the overall victory.
Some interesting news coming from Instagram of all places. A mysterious Instagram page appeared in the last week called Rufus Legacy. It claims to be the World Championship of Motorsports. Your legacy awaits. Multiple drivers have been invited to this supposed World Championship of Motorsport event, including the likes of Scott Dixon, Sebastian Vettel, Joey Logano, Fernando Alonso, Ryan Hunter-Reay, and others.
So Sunday was the first Formula One Grand Prix of the season. It was the Australian Grand Prix from Melbourne. Valtteri Bottas was on an absolute tear, dominated the race, won by over 20 seconds over Lewis Hamilton. A little bit of a side note, on the initial start, homeboy Daniel Ricciardo in his first start for Renault lost his front wing, ended up retiring later in the race with mechanical problems. Lewis Hamilton completed the Mercedes 1-2 sweep. Max Verstappen stood on the final step of the podium. Sebastian Vettel and Charles Leclerc in his first Ferrari start rounds out the top 5.
Fernando Alonso is looking to add another crown jewel event to his racing CV. He targets to drive the Bathurst 1000 by 2020.
So NASCAR and the NASCAR Hall of Fame recently released the ballot for the 2020 class nominees, headlined by far by 3-time Cup Series champion Tony Stewart. Others that were added to the list include Sam Ard, Neil Bonnet, Marvin Panch, Jim Paschal, and Red Vogue. Actually removed from the list, surprisingly, was Kirk Shelmerdine, who won 4 championships at Richard Childress Racing with Dale Earnhardt.
Some new team news coming out of the NASCAR Gander Outdoors Truck Series. Timmy Hill will attempt to qualify for his own team. Starting this weekend at Martinsville, he'll pilot the number 56 truck.
And rounding it out here on Stop and Go, a very long Stop and Go segment, the NASCAR Xfinity Series. On Saturday, we all thought that was going to be Kyle Busch's 200th NASCAR National Series victory. That was not the case, despite the 18 car dominating. A pit road mishap put him deep in the field, and he had to rally back. He did finish second, though. Cole Custer ended up winning the victory, and a Stewart-Haas Racing Ford. So that wraps up Stop and Go. A lot going on the past week in racing, and probably one of the most controversial things leads us into our main discussion, the Cup Series qualifying format. Now, we could pretty much open up a can of worms with that, because there's a lot to talk about, I think. Gosh, this new package has been no shortage of a black eye, I guess you could say, just because of the shenanigans it's provided. It almost reminds you of super speedway qualifying when they ran group qualifying for that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think the package as a whole has been a black eye, regardless of qualifying. But yeah, the qualifying package, I mean, everybody saw this coming. It wasn't something crazy. NASCAR has already limited it to single car qualifying for the other 2 touring series, including the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series at tracks above 1.5 miles. So I don't know why NASCAR wasn't proactive, knowing the effects of this package and implementing something similar. Start the season off with it.
Now, I did forget to mention this, but they did announce that they'd make a tweak to the format for qualifying. I don't know. I really hope they wouldn't go to single car with multiple rounds, because I hate when they do that for plate tracks. I don't understand why they do that for plate tracks. It seems like a waste of time to me. Even if they're only running 1 lap, I really think they should, for plate tracks and for, I guess, this package, they need to just go single car across the board and you get 1 lap. Because it just doesn't make sense to continuously redo, go round after round, to set the field. It just doesn't make sense to me, honestly.
To me, it's just NASCAR says they don't want to go back to single car queue. I just don't get it. The drivers
Why not?
The drivers don't like it. It's just a gimmick.
Yeah.
No, race fans will tell you it was not broken when it was single car qualifying, but everybody likes to say now, "Oh, well, single car qualifying is so terrible." I'm like, well, then what was the issue before?
Yeah.
Now listen, I agree. Group qualifying on road courses, that is a fantastic idea.
Yes.
Love it. Love it. Absolutely love it. But everywhere else, single
Not
car.
necessary.
Single car.
Well, and see, the point with group qualifying on road courses, it's such a big track to sit there and wait for one car to go around, for them to come around to finish their lap, and to send the next one out. It's such a big track that you could send out 3, 4, 5, 6 cars or more at the same time, have them equally spread out, not have to worry about any of them interfering with each other, and they send so many of them out at a time that they still don't interfere with each other, because the teams kind of police themselves, they get staggered and everything, and honestly, yeah, that's really the only logical place you should see group qualifying in stock car racing is on road courses. Short tracks, it hasn't been too big of an issue, I don't think. People have been pretty mindful of where, make sure you find a gap when you go out there, so you don't impede somebody's lap. Intermediates, I think honestly intermediates would be fine for group qualifying if it wasn't this package. And super speedways, I don't think we should ever go back to group qualifying for that, because we saw in Xfinity, Daytona 2015 when Suarez junked, a good group of cars. Daytona 2014 in the July race, the 500 in 2015. This it just opens a can of worms of the stupid things that can happen in group qualifying, and we've seen it this year already with this package. It's already exposed how dumb it can be.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you on the point that you shouldn't see group qualifying anywhere but a road course. Now, you could possibly get away with it at like a short track. It would probably speed up things a little bit.
Yeah.
But I don't know where NASCAR's coming from where this is like terrible to have single car. To me, when single car qualifying happened, you used to get a breakdown of every single driver that was qualifying.
Equal exposure.
You got equal exposure, equal TV time. Yes, the broadcasts were a lot longer. I will agree to that. I wouldn't mind if they were to just even condense it down into an hour-long segment.
Like a highlight.
Give a highlight of it, even if it was tape delayed. That's fine. I don't mind that.
Well, and it's interesting that you point that out. That's how you learn stories of each driver. You know what I mean? You learn their story. You learn you learn stuff that you wouldn't normally learn on race day. And I think that kind of exposure is what interests people. Like that's the fun part about tuning in to qualify. I remember, Friday evenings as a kid, turn on Speed Channel and you'd watch qualifying. Even if it's on in the background, you can still hear what's going on. It's almost essentially like a radio broadcast because they're just talking about that team or that driver, their past, what they've got going on. Maybe they got a new sponsor this week, just stuff like that. It's pretty interesting, honestly.
And one thing that I saw that a lot of people were talking about, well, I hope if they do go back to single car, they don't make it to where it's based off of a draw or such like that. And I'm like, that was part of the draw about it. I said, not the fastest car always sat on the pole. Now you're saying, objectively, yes, the fastest car will sit on the pole now. But that eliminates parity, which, if you're trying to be an entertainment aspect, which NASCAR likes to push, that they're an entertainment business, not a sport. But
which they are. It's both, but yeah.
Yeah, you have to be both in a sense, but they like to push the entertainment aspect up your throat. Then the whole parody aspect is great, but The issue is that they keep eliminating things that create parity.
Yeah. I just think if they keep this package, if it's I mean, long term they're not going to keep it, but this package, they need to do away with group qualifying aside from road courses and get away from the or the round qualifying. Like why, why do we go to super speedways and sit there for who knows how long? All right, 40 cars just qualified. All right, cool. We whittled it down to 24. Now they're going to re-qualify, set another lap. All right, we just had 24 cars go. We're down to 12, and they're going to run another. I mean, it just...
Well, I just want to correct you on that.
It's a waste of time.
It's only 2 rounds at super speedways, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
If you're going to go to a single car format, just do it a single... Just give everybody 2 laps then.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the old format. My bad.
Yeah, and just... Seriously, just go back to the old format.
Yeah.
NASCAR fans will complain just to complain about it. Listen, I'm one of the ones that complains all the time.
Yeah.
I'll complain to complain. But just seeing this whole... I think initially the group qualifying aspect was cool, but then I just think the gimmick wore off, and I'll be honest with you, I cannot remember the last time I actually watched a qualifying session from start to finish.
Oh, yeah. Probably... For me, it's been over 5 years. Over 5 years. I mean, yeah. I mean, we're going back to the Speed Channel days, definitely. So that's 2013 and before.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I hope they figure it out, that's for sure. Let's move on to our next topic, and it's a pretty smooth transition, I'd say. The Cup Series package. So we've had a couple races under it. I think it's safe to say that package on the short ovals, I wouldn't say that's ideal, having that package running on shorter tracks, but I think running that package on intermediates, it's different. You know what I mean? It's different. The short run aspect, it's absolutely insane. The long run aspect, people say it sucks. But, I mean, to me, if you're at the track and you're watching cars go by, you're not going to know what speed they're going. I mean, I'm sure watching this year's package versus last year's package at the track, it probably looks the same if you're talking speed. And if we're talking long run, when everybody's spread out, I'm sure it looks the same too. If you're sitting at the track and watching, cars battle it out, all spread out, over the course of a 30, 40 lap run, if it looks the same, then... I don't know why people are so upset about it. I don't know what people expected. Maybe they expected them to be pack racing for 30 or 40 straight laps. I don't know where you would see that, what kind of car you'd see that with at Auto Club or Las Vegas or Atlanta, but to me that's just not racing. The package is definitely not perfect by any means, but I'd say it's better than what we had on intermediates at least.
Yeah, personally, it's not going to sound, it's just not the PC way to do it, but I think it needs shit canned. I mean, it honest to God, needs shit canned.
Yeah.
It's proven to me that NASCAR sees a small sample size of something, one race with the Cup cars at Charlotte last year, and everybody's like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. when it's not. It's not.
It's not. No.
It's not the greatest thing ever. It just it showed to me they care more about the cars being quote closer together than they do actually racing.
Yeah.
And NASCAR's always been a racing product first. Trying to get the racing product right. But this was just a complete farce, in my opinion.
To me, there's several underlying problems with this, and I think it goes back to the car, just the car. And I'm not talking about just the aero package, because I mean, you can change the aero package all you want, but all it's proving is this car does not provide good racing. Yeah,
it's awful.
Yeah,
for racing. You keep you keep allowing these teams to develop under the car or things like that, where you don't get to see it per se, and they're outspending themselves to the point where they had to bring in, an independent firm to say we got to cut cost, got to get cost under control, And it's just making the racing worse because they keep finding ways to add 0.15% downforce. And to a racing fan, they could give a rat's ass about downforce, okay?
Yeah.
They could give a rat's ass about downforce.
And it just seems like it's all underbody.
Yeah, it's all underbody. The the side of the car, just the body manipulations since I would say 2006 on have been absolutely.
Oh, like the fender skews that you'd see on the Chevys? Yes. Like the fender flares?
Yes,
or whatever you want to call it? Yeah, like the gosh, I'm struggling for words here, but the front fenders on the Monte Carlos definitely stuck out severely more than like the Fords and the Dodges and I mean eventually Toyota, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's just this whole, and then they misstepped with the COT and.
See, I'll disagree with you there. If we're comparing the COT to now,
Oh, I think
the COT takes the cake by far. Just because, I mean, maybe the winged COT, it was not safe, but
it
we
wasn't.
don't have to throw a stupid package at people to provide good racing or somewhat decent racing. I mean, I think it definitely had its problems, but there's still parity. You had Tony Stewart, who barely made the chase in 2011, go on to win 5 out of 10 in the chase and the championship. Just that car was a lot better than what people make of it. People say that car was a black eye on NASCAR. Honestly, that car makes the Gen 6 look like a disaster.
Well, you have to take a look at it this way. They say it's a black eye in terms of it had no identity, no anything.
Yeah.
But in terms of racing and racing product, fantastic. Will not deny that. It's kind of like, and this is another quote NASCAR series, but Grand Am and American Le Mans Series. American Le Mans Series adapted, of course, Le Mans Series spec LMP1s, LMP2s, when Grand Am / NASCAR went with the Daytona prototypes. And the Daytona prototypes objectively had better racing because of it. So, I don't know, you're kind of in between a rock and a hard place because Chevy said they were about to leave if they didn't get what they were asking with the Gen 6.
Yeah. It's sad. I mean, to me, you almost can't have the best of both worlds. When you've got aerodynamics being such a big part of today's racing, any form of racing, when it comes to, all right, does this look good on track or does this race good on track? To me, I'd take the latter of the two. Like, people hated the aero kits in IndyCar because, I mean, the road course racing was not very good. The street course and short oval racing was not very good. But the Indy 500 was insane every year that they had that package. Texas 2017 was insane. Texas 2016 was pretty crazy too. It didn't look good by any means, but the racing was solid. And so, I mean, that's something I think should be considered when they're looking at the next generation car is, looks are cool. It's, it's always nice to have a car that looks cool. But I think the new IndyCar Speedway aero kit kind of proves that just because it looks good doesn't mean it necessarily races good.
Yeah. And, IndyCar is a great example of, we made a mistake. And you know what? We're going to fix this. And they have fixed it for the most part.
It, yeah.
But they even admitted to themselves, like with Indy last year. They're like, maybe we didn't do enough for that. So we're going to attempt to work with it. See, with IndyCar, they actually do some testing before they actually just implement something, with one little small sample size. They do tons and tons of testing and data testing.
Tire testing and team testing, spring training. Yeah.
And there's
lots of money goes into it, but they do their job.
Lots of money goes into it, and that's with a series that arguably has less fiscal resources to do so. And they create a better on-track product. Whenever you go with NASCAR, They see one little thing and one little sample size, and then all the tracks said, "Man, this I want this at my track this year," and then the teams wouldn't compromise on a in between package. So then you got, oh well, I guess we're gonna do all of it this year, even though that it. You know, to me, NASCAR needs to go to an IndyCar style package to where you run different configurations at different tracks.
Exactly, because last year's package was great at short tracks. Great. I
I
mean,
wouldn't say great. I would say it was pretty good.
Martinsville the last 2 years was great.
Martinsville was not great in
Bristol.
the Martinsville was not great in the spring last year. It was pretty
I'm
awful.
talking in the okay. I'm talking the fall. Both fall races last year were pretty good. Bristol in the fall was pretty good. Uh, Richmond, you could argue that it was not very good,
Richmond
but
hasn't been good since they resealed the track, but that's
yeah.
another topic for another day.
But short track racing has more entertainment value to intermediate racing. Even if the racing is bad, the racing is closer, and for whatever reason, people in the stands, people watching on television, instantly just think it's better because they're racing closer. So you know, if that's what makes people want to watch, then I guess that's what you gotta go with.
I just wish fans would stop getting the impression that all night rate that it has to be night
Has to be a
races.
night race?
Yeah, short tracks have to be a night race. That's
Nope.
like Richmond. They finally went back to a day race for first time in like 20 years. Fans complained, "Oh, it was too hot," and then they went right back to night, and the racing objectively was better.
Yeah, I mean, Virginia and May. I mean, it can't be that hot. So
They don't,
or
those people don't know what hot is, but let's
yeah,
just be honest with ourselves. But that, yeah, I'm
that's
just,
like saying Florida people don't know what cold is.
yeah, it's like cup pack or getting back to the cup package. So I don't think era wise, we're not talking about something that's the actual big issue with the package itself, and that's the tapered spacer. That is the evil culprit that has caused racing to just go down the shitter in all series. And it was a cheap alternative to save money.
But I think it was a short-term fix. I think it was a band-aid, honestly.
It's been a band-aid. It's been a
Yeah.
band-aid for the Truck Series. It's been a band-aid for the Xfinity Series. It's been a band-aid for the Cup Series. Because instead of actually creating a new engine formula, which I guess is
Too difficult.
it's like rocket science to the NASCAR people. Instead of just adopting a smaller capacity V8 and maybe like a V6 single turbo and i4 twin turbo in the Xfinity series, oh no, we're just going to taper it. So we're going to restrict the mixture of air and fuel to the car. I would argue that restricting the fuel flow would be better than restricting the airflow, because then it becomes momentum based. And
Yeah.
and whoever dominates the Xfinity series with that, you're going to dominate here. And that's
Who dominates the Xfinity series, John?
who has dominated the Xfinity series since that change is what you should be asking yourself. And the answer is Kyle Busch.
Never would have guessed it.
Yeah. Which segues really well into our next topic about Kyle's 200th win.
I People have been beating a dead horse about this, and they just keep beating it, and the argument on it is hilarious. And I'm not saying it's hilarious because I'm so radical one side versus the other. It's just, why does it matter? You know what I mean? Because we're comparing two different eras of drivers. I mean, a lot of Richard Petty's wins came before the modern era. Now, you can make of that what you want. You can make an argument for or against because because they came before the modern era. You could make arguments either way. What I look at, regardless, you can have your little complaints, your little digs at Petty or Kyle Busch over whatever. Oh, Petty won a race that had 18 cars in it. Kyle Busch won a rain shortened race. Okay, cool. What I'm looking at is the big picture stats. Richard Petty has 7 Daytona 500 wins, 7 championships, 200 Cup Series wins. Kyle Busch has one championship, and by the way, completely won it fairly by the format. But I'm still going to point it out. He ran 2/3 of the season, so he has
He
one
got
cup
in.
championship.
He got in on a technicality and
Yeah,
won the championship.
it was a waiver.
Yeah, he didn't. Yeah,
But by the rules, he still won it, so you can't take that away from him. All right, I'm not going to take that away from him.
I could. I just don't think that's not a championship, in my opinion.
Yeah, but it still counts in the stat book.
Yeah, well, the stat book's wrong.
So we got one championship for Kyle Busch and 0 Daytona 500s. The big thing to me, he's a generational talent. He's one of the best that NASCAR has seen. He's definitely the best of this era. But you can't tell me he's the best right now. You can't tell me right now that Kyle Busch is the best NASCAR driver ever. You cannot. It's too early in his career. He's, 34 years old?
Something like that, yeah.
He hasn't even broke 40 yet. I mean, it's hilarious. We've still got an active 7-time champion, and we're talking about a guy that has one cup championship, being the best of all time. We're completely ignoring the fact that Jeff Gordon has 93 wins in the modern era, which is the most out of anybody. Kyle Busch is 40 away from that, which he could definitely still get to 100 by the time his career's over. I'm not denying that. But he's not the best of all time. I don't know why people keep pressing that.
Because
he's definitely the best the Xfinity Series has ever seen. He's definitely the best that the Truck Series has ever seen. He's not the best, as of right now, that the Cup Series has ever seen. He's not the most accomplished.
Well, he's not the most accomplished NASCAR driver ever. That's just unfair to people like Richie Evans or Ray Hendrick, who have won respectively 300 plus races and 700 plus races. We also had another NASCAR driver that won over 1,200 plus races, Dick Trickle. But we're not going to say that he's better than them. No.
Yeah, I mean, if we start getting into how many K&N races they won, how many how many short track races, local races they won, how many kart races they won, then we get into that whole thing. And
I want to say that
let's categorize them by cup wins, because Richard Petty didn't race in the Truck Series. Did Richard Petty ever race in the Xfinity Series? Okay, I guess it would have been the Sportsman Series back then.
So the issue is with the Sportsman Series, you don't have any information, or at least any discernible data you can look at pre-1982 when it became the Xfinity Series.
Yeah.
So, no, you can't really... I cannot tell you if he did run a Sportsman race or two.
Yeah.
Now, there was another series he ran that no one ever wants to bring up, is the Convertible Series, which was a short-plagued series in the mid to late 1950s.
Now, he did win races in that, I believe.
He won one race in that.
Okay. So, Kyle Busch still has to... he needs one more win.
No, because we're going to cherry pick Richard Petty's wins. But we're not going to cherry pick Kyle Busch's wins, because he did it in the modern era.
Yeah,
whenever he was basically a modern day equivalent of a factory driver.
Yeah.
Sorry.
When David Land was here last week, we talked about this, and it makes complete sense, and it's honestly it's a good move by NASCAR on Fox, NASCAR on NBC, but it's a marketing ploy. If it's something that makes people talk about NASCAR, they're going to do it. Because, I mean, definitely winning 200 national races, I mean, that's a big deal. I mean, I don't want to take that away from him. That is a big deal. But to say that he compares to Richard Petty, or to say that he's the best of all time, I just don't think you can. Being respectful to both parties, So, yeah, you can't.
No, it's like Richard Petty said himself. It's like Kyle Busch going to 1A and 2A teams and racing against them and beating them. And that's the modern day equivalent of it. It's like we said in the last segment about the whole tapered spacer. If you look at Kyle Busch pre-tapered spacer and post-tapered spacer, there's a complete there's a positive trend of wins and results shoot up as soon as the tapered spacer gets introduced.
Yeah.
So
I'm not going to take that away from him though, because everybody raced under that format. If he capitalized on it the best, that's good for him. But I mean, yeah, you do make a point there. Uh,
but it's saying though that the stock, it's not like a late model that has a 750 900 horsepower engine in it. It's something that has restricted. It's all about momentum. So it's not the hardest thing to drive per se. But I don't know. And also, it helps Busch that there hasn't been a schedule. There's been what? Since his career started, how many tracks have been added to the NASCAR Cup schedule?
Kentucky.
That's it. And
Yeah.
he was dominant at that track. So in
But
Petty's day, I'm looking here, he's won at least 25, 35 locations.
yeah. Again, I won't take that away from Kyle because he's racing in the same. I mean, he's racing the same tracks that everybody else in the series was racing at that time, so you can't really take that away from him. That's more a shot at NASCAR, I would think.
That'd be a great topic for a discussion.
Oh gosh.
The schedule.
Yeah, we definitely got to talk about that sometime. But that's really, I think, a whole episode worth of talking because there's so many different directions we could go with that, and it's a really intriguing discussion. And there's a lot that NASCAR's working on to make changes.
Yeah, well, we can't do anything yet because they signed a fantastic 5-year deal to keep the schedule the same for another 5 years. So, yeah, fun times.
The last thing that I want to say about Kyle Busch in the Xfinity series and the Truck series and the late model races he's ran, and I can't blame him for wanting to race because for some people like Jeff Gordon or Jimmy Johnson, they did better focusing on one thing every weekend. The Cup Series, focusing on what really mattered to them, their career, what made them the most money, the Cup Series. But then there's other people that really thrive off of being able to race as much as they possibly can. And I can't blame Kyle Busch, who's a racer, for wanting to race. Whether it's the Cup Series, whether it's the Xfinity Series, the Truck Series, going and racing a late model. I mean, we're completely forgetting Kevin Harvick went and ran a couple K&N races. I mean, we've had several Cup drivers race K&N races in the past. So I mean, if he wants to race, let him race. I don't really see it as cherry picking there, but people take it as that.
Well, the thing is with Busch is that whenever he goes to a series, instead of it being him running
his car
with his own equipment that he got, no, it's a full factory Toyota Joe Gibbs.
Yeah.
Joe Gibbs.
That's the one knock I think you could have on him in that department.
Yeah,
because remember when he ran his own Xfinity team, and he was driving it, and his brother Kurt was driving it with him.
Literally,
Kurt won one race. Kyle didn't win any races. The only race that they won with the 54, when they ran full time as a team, was Kurt at Richmond. One win over that whole season, and then
then
it
after
got
that, he
merged in with Gibbs.
Yeah, then he sold it back to Gibbs because I guess he wasn't winning enough. So
I think there was something that Gibbs said. I believe it was a distraction to an extent. I think it was actually a part of his contract somewhere in there that he sold it back. Sold that car to Gibbs. But yeah, I mean,
whether it was a distraction or not, people could point the fingers that he wasn't winning enough, so he just sold it back to them so he could win again. Which, yeah.
Either way, I think it would be cool to see drivers have their own teams in the Xfinity series to race, because if it's a split weekend where say Cup's racing Michigan, Xfinity's racing Mid Ohio, somebody gets the opportunity to race an Xfinity car. Odds are it's probably a pretty decent car.
Well, I'd say that for a lot of drivers. I mean, I mean,
Junior runs in a Junior Motorsports car. You could argue it's just a Hendrick car in the Xfinity series, but regardless, I mean, it's his team.
Yeah, it is his team. I mean, you used to have KHI. That's defunct now.
That
But
was I think that was a financial crisis in itself, but
no, it wasn't financial. It was distraction.
it was a distraction. But I mean, I think it was Kevin who even admitted himself. I mean, definitely wasn't running an Xfinity and a truck team to make money, because I mean, running a truck series team, you're not going to make that much money off of that.
If any money.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it is a valid point, and analysts have. I mean, Larry McReynolds pointed it out that these Cup drivers. I think you could make a case that Cup drivers should be able to run more Xfinity races if they ran with their own team, like if they had their own team,
And
not running their Cup Series team, not bringing in Cup Series pit crews, not running basically Cup Series caliber cars. I'm not saying cars that could run in the Cup Series, but it's prepared by a Cup team. It's going to be the best car in the field.
Yeah, I agree. There should be like no support from the Cup side.
Yeah.
With the exception of, well, maybe you could buy an engine, but like the chassis have to be prepared by you, the bodies have to be hung by you, or another party, etc., not your Cup team.
Yeah. So that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Pit Limiter Podcast. Sean, thanks for joining me again.
Hey, thanks, Zach. Maybe I'll actually show up on consecutive weeks for once.
We'll have to wait and see. So, John, where can we find you on social media?
Oh, where can we find me? You can find me on Twitter at JSPool III, and you can find me on Facebook at John Poole III.
Follow me on Twitter at ZBCannon4, also Instagram at ZBCannon4. Check out my karting page on Facebook at Zach Buchanan Racing, and also subscribe to my YouTube channel, Zach Buchanan. And make sure you guys follow the podcast on Twitter at The Pit Limiter, like us on Facebook at The Pit Limiter Podcast, and check us out on YouTube as well. We do upload episodes to YouTube, so if you miss an episode, maybe you're listening on Google Podcasts or Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to podcasts from, whatever app you may be listening on. Maybe you're listening to us on Facebook as we stream live too. We do upload our episodes to YouTube as well, so make sure you guys go subscribe to us. So that being said, thanks everybody for tuning in this week. We look forward to seeing you next week on the Pit Limiter Podcast. Goodbye, everybody.